Hello everyone. So we have discussed about the MapReduce concept and what is the MapReduce paradigm, how the mappers will be allotted and how the reducers will be allotted, and the complete workflow of the MapReduce, it was completed. Now we are going to implement the MapReduce program, how to implement the MapReduce program. So to implement the MapReduce program, we have to implement three things as we discussed. If you want to implement from the scratch, it will be very lengthy program. Let us say for example, we have to write the code for splitting the data and then taking the data into the mapper and then generating the intermediate outputs and partitioning. All these have to be handled. Or if you want to make it as the abstract level, in the basic level, that is, we can use the existing framework, that is already the mapper classes are available, reducer classes are available. So we can use them, and we have to define what is the map method and reduce method, and then we have to write one driver program. So there are several steps for the basic program. Okay. Now the first step is defining the mapper class with the map method. Mapper and map class, map method. Mapper is the process which will take the which will be executed on top of the task tracker, right? The mapper will call the map method number of times. How many number of times? For each line or for each record, the map method will be called once, right? And the defining the reducer class with the reduce method. The reducers, how many number of reducers will be there? For number of reducers will be equal to number of outputs required, and the reduce method will call the reduce method. The reduce method will be called number of keys. So how many number of keys are there? Those many number of times the reduce method will be called. So it is the key based, right? And then we have to write a driver program to combine the mapper, reducer, and to specify what is the input, what is the output, and all these things. So let us see one by one. So, and then of course if you want any additional libraries are required and additional methods are required, you can define them. And defining the mapper class, there are some required packages: org.apache.hadoop.io, okay, and org.apache.hadoop.mapreduce. MapReduce is the old version, you need not think about that. MapReduce, you can go with the MapReduce. So org.apache.hadoop.io. All the input output operations will be handled by hadoop.io. Let us because see, the mapper is taking the data from the split. Split is the file system. Split is available in the file system, that is in the form of the file. So how can you read the file? For that we should have some IO. So as we discussed in the HDFS, if you want to read the data from the file, we have to use some classes, writer classes and reader classes, and all these are available. So in the similar way we have to read them. The same classes can be used, the same package can be used, and map it. And then for the mapper, here we are concentrating on the mapper. How can we define the mapper class? See here, public class, we can define our own mapper, user mapper name, extends. We are already mapper class is defined in the MapReduce. So we are inheriting the property, deriving a new class from the existing class, that is a mapper. Actually, the mapper was defined as the generic class in the library. Generic class means they will not provide any data types at the time of defining that class. So whenever you are deriving a new class from the existing class, then at that time you have to mention what is the input type, what are the data types are using for that in that particular class, that will be mentioned. So that is the generic class. Because of that reason we have to mention extends mapper, and then you have to provide the input key type and input value type, output key type and output value type. Why should we give this? Because the input for the mapper is always key value pair. So key value pair means the mapper is having the input key value pair, output key value pair. Input key value, input key data type, we have to mention the input key data type, input value data type, output key data type, output value data type. So we are specifying both, all of them, input key type, input value type, output key type, output value type. And then within that we have to define the map method. You have to define the map method. How to define the map method, that we are seeing, that we will see in the next slides. So map method. So the map method will be called once per record or once per line in the split. Okay, now see here, the map method once per record, line or anything, it is having 3 parameters: input key, input value, and then context. Here it is a new term, context. Input key, input value, we have to mention the input key, input value. You know that input key, input value means what is the input key type, what is the input value type, that's what we have to mention. Input key type, key, you have to mention the value here, the parameter here, and input value type, that you have to mention the parameter here. Previously we have mentioned in the, while defining the mapper, we you can see that while defining the mapper we are just mentioning what are the data types, but here you have to mention the parameters, clearly you have to mention the parameters. So you can see that parameter key and value, and then these two are the inputs. What is the output? The output can be written onto the context. Context means it is a common area where the map method can write the output. So meaning that the map method will be called number of times. So number of times the output will be generated. For those outputs, all those outputs, they have to be written onto somewhere where they have to write, meaning that they are providing one common area, that is the context. Whatever the map method, you can call any number of call methods, all those call methods will write the output onto the context only, so that they will write in a common area. The map method can be called 100 times, but the context, it will be appended to the context every time. So that is a context. So context is having the output key type and output value type. These two can be written onto the context only. And it throws, we have to handle some exceptions, that is throws IO exception and interrupted exception, and inside that you can write your own code, right? And then data types in Hadoop. Now we are talking about, we discussed about the input key type, input value type, output key type, output value type. But what are the data types available? That we have to mention clearly. So the data types in the Hadoop especially are, it is not a regular Java program, it is the Hadoop program, meaning that we have to take the data from the Hadoop. So there is a streaming concept available. So when we discussed about the file handling API, HDFS API, we discussed about this concept, that is we have several data types in the Hadoop related to the base data types of primitive data types of Java. So see here, Java primitive data types, Boolean. For Boolean we have the writable implementation available, that is the Boolean writable, byte writable, short writable, int writable, float writable, long writable, double writable. Like this, these are the various classes defined in the Hadoop package, Hadoop environment or Hadoop library, Hadoop API. So in that, so if you want to read the integer item, then you have to use int writable. If you want to write the integer value onto the HDFS, then you have to give int writable. So like that, what is the data type required, that you have to mention clearly, right? So next, defining the reducer class. In the reducer class, the same, it is similar to the mapper class, definition is same, syntaxes are similar. So see here, org.apache.hadoop.io and org.apache.hadoop.mapreduce. And then how can we define that? Public class user reducer name extends reducer of, this is also the generic type, generic class, so that we have to mention the input key type, input value type, output key type and output value type, and then you have to mention the reduce method. And see here, the reduce method will be called number of times. How many number of times it will be called? That is the number of keys available. Number of keys available in this application, those many number of times the reduce method will be called. So of course you don't consider this. Actually we are having some problem. Yeah, no, this is not this. Here the map, it is not the map. The reduce method will be called once per the key. How many number of keys given by the mapper phase, that those many number of times the reduce method will be called. So it is also having the 3 parameters, same: input key, input value and context as usual. And syntax is also similar. So public void reduce of input key type and input value type, and then context you have to mention, and then you have to handle the IO exception and interrupted exception, and then go for the code for this reduce method, right? Now we have the mapper class and we have the reducer class. Now we have to connect this to the we have to connect all of them. How can we connect them? By writing a driver program. We have to write the driver program, that is by creating a job object. We have to create a job object, that is the first step, and then set the driver class to generate the jar file in the cluster, meaning that whatever you are creating the application, that application should be available in the jar file, and that jar file will be distributed to all the nodes where it has to be executed. That is, set the driver class name for the thing, and then set the job name. We can set the job name, set the mapper class name, what is the mapper for this, and then set the reducer class name, what is the reducer for this application, and then add the input path. What is the input here? Input for the mapper, that we have to mention. Which file is having the input, that we have to mention. And we have to set the output directory, where you have to write, where this application has to write the output, that you have to mention. And then set the input output key value data types. What are the input output key value data types, that you have to mention in the driver program only. So this is the way how to write the MapReduce application, and in the next session we will implement the word count program. Thank you.